what are some of the red flags that you've seen over the years with your expertise of actually getting this right?
Step number one is, when should you join Medicare? I know that sounds simple, but people get it wrong. So I think one of the mistakes is not realizing what Medicare rules say. But Medicare rules say by the time you're 65, you either have to be on Medicare or on an employer health insurance plan that meets Medicare rules. So for your clients, Bill, who are working past 65, if their employer health insurance meets certain rules and it's cheaper than Medicare, they can and likely should delay their Medicare coverage until they likely retire. And that could easily waste $10,000 a year. Not only that, but also allow him to have fewer options when he does eventually retire.
Welcome back to the Retire As You Desire podcast. And we have Emily, the Medicare Coach, the very, very, very most important person I've ever met for Medicare on the show today. And this has been such an important conversation for a ton of our clients over the years. And I thought we would bring in the specialist to really share her story and really lay the facts down correctly for our audience. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
So I was really blessed to be on one of your shows, even with David McKnight. I'm a big fan of his, Power Zero, a couple of years ago now. And you have grown your business to really the premier Medicare spot for Americans. And this is such an important thing to get right in the beginning, even when you're 63 and 64. So could you please start off with sharing your story? How did you get started in Medicare, of all things to really focus and create a business around?
Yeah, because I'm not 64. I'm not 65 or anything close to that. But I kind of fell into Medicare because of my dad. So after school, I spent about 7 years at Goldman Sachs managing risks for the bank and its clients and all those things. And I thought I knew everything about kind of retirement planning and financial planning and all those things. And it wasn't until my dad was approaching 65 and I was home one time and he goes, Emily, check this out. Like, can you figure this Medicare thing out? And I didn't. Like, I was shocked at the confusing lingo and the ongoing circles and a lot of ads about plans we had no idea what existed. And so I feel like I took my hat off and was trying to figure out what was going on. So we actually turned to the Medicare Coach who helped us at the time, who was an independent consultant and a non-agent, non-government employee to really help us navigate Medicare, just like a CPA helps us navigate taxes. So, and I kind of took over a few years ago when Larry, who kind of founded the idea, retired. But I was amazed that my dad had worked his whole life for retirement. He'd paid into Medicare for so many years. And now he's kind of being thrown in the deep end. And I feel like the sharks were circling, trying to get us to buy their X plan or their Y plan, but no one really talked about the fundamental aspect of Medicare or how to really decide which was the best plan, right? We knew there was more to free out there, we knew what their goal was, and their goal was not our goal. And so it was really important to us to have that independent advice to help us make the right decision. And since then, I've taken over the Medicare Coach, and we help clients in all 50 states, and I think we're about 20 countries right now, help them navigate Medicare as well, because again, it's such an important part of people's retirement plan, and it's so frequently overlooked or not thought of in the right way, and it can create huge implications, both from what healthcare you can get, but also from what you pay for that healthcare. I mean, I had a family call us the other day and they're like, one, where were you when I first joined? Because my dad has cancer and we have to decide, do we just stick with his doctor that we hate? Or do we have to pay out of pocket for the doctor that we want to see, but that doctor doesn't take his Medicare plan? And so having these conversations early on can help because if you do the right Medicare decision, you can have it all. You can see the best doctor. It can protect your savings. It can be inexpensive, right? Relatively speaking. But when people mess it up in the beginning, you're kind of screwed, unfortunately.
Well, let's go into that. I'm sure there's a bunch of red flags that you probably have seen over the years. And that's an incredible story, by the way. You really just took the concept and went really deep into that. It's amazing. in dealing with your dad's scenario, I bet he was getting a ton of phone calls at the house, on his cell phone, emails, like the sharks are circling, which is so annoying. My clients have that issue too. What are some of the red flags that you've seen over the years with your expertise of actually getting this right? Like, how do you avoid these things?
I think there's one thing, and it comes down to we have a 5-step process, but step number one is, when should you join Medicare? And I know that sounds simple, but people get it wrong. So I think one of the mistakes is not realizing what Medicare rules say and not fully understanding what those scary envelopes they're sending you in the mail. But Medicare rules say by the time you're 65, you either have to be on Medicare or on an employer health insurance plan that meets Medicare rules. So for your clients, Bill, who are working past 65, if their employer health insurance meets certain rules and it's cheaper than Medicare, they can and likely should delay their Medicare coverage until they likely retire. I had a person on my workshop the other day who had an agent. He's working for another couple of years, but he goes, my agent already enrolled me in Medicare. And I go, hold up. Why would your agent do that? Because I don't want him paying for both Medicare and an employer plan unnecessarily. I mean, that could easily waste $10,000 a year. Not only that, but also allow him to have fewer options when he does eventually retire. So I think that one of the big red flags is like, not insurance companies are who we usually hear from, and their goal is to sell us plans, right? But that's not our goal. Our goal is to have the best health insurance that protects our retirement savings. And so it's really understanding, one, the basic rules. But I think the other red flag is, I see a lot of people assuming that Medicare Advantage is the best option. And I'm not going to go through all the details in this session. It's better for another place. But I think you're the same way, Bill, right? Like, if they're advertising it to me everywhere,
Everywhere.
there must be a reason for them. And is there a reason because they want the best for me? Probably not.
Probably not. Most likely not. Yeah.
So the question is like, ask yourself, the issue with Medicare Advantage is it can fit some people really well if you have a unique situation.
And are those for the people who are healthy? Like very healthy, they see the same doctors, they don't want to travel. Yeah. Is that like the parameters for that?
I would say if you're healthy, you're always going to be healthy. So Advantage plans work when you're healthy. Right? They have 0 premiums, free gym memberships, extra vision, dental things like that. It can be great when you're healthy. But the moment they start to have health issues, even like lab tests, those copays can add up very quickly, and the out-of-pocket costs can be large. I always say that almost the people who make the most Medicare mistakes, the people who make the most Medicare mistakes tend to be the ones who are healthy when they join Medicare. Because they assume that they're always going to be healthy. But we can't forget that we can't go back. So we can't just make a short-term decision around healthcare like we can with other healthcare decisions. Medicare, because of certain guarantee issues, right? Because of certain open enrollment periods, you're not guaranteed to switch. You can switch Part D and Advantage whenever you want to, but you're not guaranteed in most states to go back to a Medicare supplement plan, which is where most people want to be when they have health issues. It tends to have the best coverage at the lowest price. So Advantage can fit some people really well. Some people literally cannot afford a premium, and they just pray to God they don't have health bills.
They haven't saved enough.
Yeah. But if you've saved enough, you want to go on likely original Medicare because it's going to protect you financially. It's going to take your $6,000 out of pockets on Advantage down to $0 or even $2,000 or $3,000 on original Medicare. So it's like, if we're thinking, so the financial planners that I work with and the clients who kind of are attracted to us, they want to be protected, right? They don't want to be that person who, when they find out they have to have a shoulder surgery because they've been rock climbing or whatever it is, they don't want to have to go to Joe Schmo down the street, and they don't want to have to risk their family's retirement savings, their family's money, right? They want to be able to go to the best doctor and still protect themselves financially.
And while doing that, is the supplement the best and most important thing to be aware of when you go into retirement? Or when you go into Medicare? Is that like the biggest thing that people miss, or is it just signing up for the original plan itself?
I think it's important to get supplement plans right when you first join. I think that the key, and you're hitting this on the head, Bill, is that those are really hard to change in the future.
Why are
So
they
when you
so hard? Why? Like, how come that's hard? I'm just curious because I don't know.
so
I'm
so
just
so
curious.
a cou- so so and I don't know the political history behind why they are the rules. But what I'll tell you is this, is that in some ways it's good for the planners. So in most cases you have a 6 month window where you're guaranteed to join a Medicare supplement plan no matter what your pre-existing conditions are. But in most cases after that 6 month window, it's hard to switch companies or plans.
Mm,
So what
so
does this mean?
companies.
If we didn't have this rule, what would happen? So New York State doesn't have this rule. In New York State, anyone can join a Medicare supplement plan whenever you want to.
Oh,
They always have you can always join. But it's expensive, right? It's probably 3 to 5 times the monthly premium is what you're going to see in Illinois. So it comes at a cost. So what would happen if you could always switch? What would happen is that everyone would join Medicare Advantage. The government would pump money into the Advantage plans to take care of healthy people, which means that the private companies are going to make a ton of money off of it. Then when they have health issues, they're going to come back to original Medicare. They'll be expensive for the government, and they will also be expensive for that supplement company, which then increases premiums. So by making people kind of switch, in my opinion, it makes people decide, what are you going to do? Because the government's not going to pay out money for when you're healthy and then pay even more for you when you're not healthy. Now, again, New York has a unique rule where you can switch. But again, the supplement plans reflect that in pricing. They're expensive.
they're expensive. Well, and that's where when you actually join Medicare, because you have a 7 month window, right?
Yes,
And how important is
technically.
this? I mean, technically. So let's say if like my mom did this, like she was working and when she was alive, she was actually on her company's health insurance. So when she turned 64 in 9 months, and then you're 1 month of 65, and then 3 months after, you have this technical, like you said, 7 month window. Like, what should someone do during that period? Should they sign up online on the website, or is this like just a difficult question?
Well, I think it goes back to step one, right? Which is when to join Medicare.
Hmm.
If you have an employer plan that meets Medicare rules, you might do nothing. If you're drawing Social Security, you're going to be auto enrolled in A and B, in Medicare A and B. So watch out for your card.
God,
But if you're not drawing Social Security and you don't have an employer plan, then you should get on Medicare. And you can apply for Medicare A and B through your online SSA.gov account, and that card will come in the mail usually in a couple of weeks. But it just depends on the person. That's the other thing. It's like everyone's a little bit different.
and that's why you have a 5 step process to take them
Yeah.
through that to figure it out for someone.
And I wish it wasn't required, right? Like I thought that when I was helping my dad that Medicare was like going to the DMV and getting a driver's license. Like
Right.
I was like, okay, Medicare, check the box. Like, Dad, why is this so hard? I don't get it. And then I'm like, oh,
Super complicated. It's
yeah.
extremely complicated. Now, what about vision and dental? This is a question I get a lot. What should I do? And I'm like, I'm not the health insurance person here. Like I've never done one Medicare
Yeah.
plan in my life. So when people need vision, dental, things like that, is that included in your traditional Medicare?
Yeah, good question. So Medicare covers medically necessary vision and dental.
Mhm.
What does that mean? For dental, if you have an infected tooth that has to be pulled out, sure, Medicare could cover it. But Medicare's not going to cover dental exams, cleanings, fillings, root canals, implants, any of those things. So how do you get that covered? There's a couple things. There are some Advantage plans that cover dental, They're not always great coverage, but you can get the basics covered. You can also keep your current dental plan. A lot of companies like a Delta Dental, if you call them and ask them to roll over your group plan to an individual plan, they'll do that, which
That's
is great.
brilliant.
Some doctors, some dentists are like, actually, I'd prefer you self-pay. Like, I'll cut your cost of your cleaning down to X without any insurance. Because the thing is, a lot of those dental plans don't cover much more than a cleaning and maybe an x-ray a year and like 50% of your next $2,000. But I don't know about you, but when I had a root canal, it's been a couple years now, but it's expensive and it doesn't get covered, right? Like I mean, $2,000 maximum out of pocket or whatever the maximum allotted limit goes by like in a blink, you know? Dental can be expensive, which is why sometimes you're better off saving those premiums and just paying out of pocket. But again, it's a conversation with both yourself as well as your dentist.
And knowing your teeth, your history, just like your health, all those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And speaking of other items that Medicare does not cover, let's talk about long-term care.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is like a big conundrum in both of our worlds, you know, in your dad's world, in your sister's world. Like any financial advisor needs to know this. So if you need long-term care, if you have a stroke or something happens or XYZ, how does that work?
So Medicare goes back to the keyword medically necessary services. So someone has a stroke, the medically necessary services for that Medicare will cover. But any of that custodial care, Medicare covers none of it. Bathed, fed, things like that. So for example, my aunt had a hip replacement and she was in the hospital for 3 days and she had a suture that had to be rebandaged every, I don't know, let's just say 6 hours. So she had a medically necessary purpose for having skilled nursing help. Because she doesn't have to be in the hospital anymore, but she needs a medical professional to bandage her wound, right? Medicare would cover that. But again, if my aunt had, say, Parkinson's and needed help getting bathed, Medicare won't cover any of that. And that's where it can get expensive. We were just talking about this earlier, Bill, right? But like long-term care is expensive. It's a huge, it's nothing. Yeah, it's a really tough thing. And we talked before, like the long-term care policies are so expensive.
So expensive. And the premiums are not consistent either. That's sort of the problem.
Yeah. So what I have heard some strategies from some advisors is, you know what, unless you have a gajillion dollars and you can easily afford the long-term care policies, like the uber rich can afford it, but everyone else, it's probably not worth it. Because for long-term care, if you can't afford the premiums now, you probably don't have a huge nest egg. And in some cases, if you need long-term care, you're better off just spending down your money to qualify for Medicaid. Because Medicaid, not Medicare, Medicaid will cover some long-term care expenses. So you could be on Medicare and Medicaid, but I guess my point is like long-term care is tricky. And for most people, those plans are quite expensive. Long-term care plans are quite expensive.
Yeah, and they definitely can be. I mean, this is not a recommendation. This is not like a blanket recommendation. I love my compliance team. Like they're incredible. But like what my wife and I have done for ourselves, and this is like talking what the actual advisor does, is like we've purchased life insurance that has some of those benefits built inside of it. And I've found that to be, but again, you're talking about premiums and that could be costly if you're in your 70s, 80s. I mean, it could be astronomical, but those are things you need to plan for in your 40s and your 50s and add that as part of your planning.
Yeah.
But the long-term care, I think not everyone, but I've seen so many people think that that's just covered. And if your premiums for going into a home are $8,000, $10,000 a month, and if all your money's in pre-tax money, hasn't been taxed yet, you're going to get a tax bill and it's going to deplete your assets. So that's one of the things I think people really need to be aware of. So I'm really glad we're talking about that one topic today. And as far as Medicare goes, there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. There's all the letters, right? Could you really simply just define like what the A, B, D, all these different letters mean, please?
Sure. So the two main parts of Medicare are Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B. So Medicare Part A, we don't use a ton. It's going to cover your inpatient hospital stays, again, minimal skilled nursing, as well as hospice. Now, Part A is what people prepaid for, right? Your FICA taxes went to pay for Part A. So most people will pay nothing extra for Medicare Part A premiums. So A like kind of just sits there on the shelf and it's never really used. Medicare Part B as in boy is used a lot. It covers most of your healthcare, your doctor's visits, lab tests, durable medical equipment. It's going to cover most of your physical therapy, the things that we think of Medicare Part B covers normally. Even when people go to the hospital, there's a good chance that Medicare Part B covers it and not Medicare Part A. So Medicare Part B is really the main thing. And that does have a premium that comes with it, and it's based on your income. So there's a base amount for your monthly premium for Part B, and then after that, you can pay more if you have a higher income. The next letter is C as in Charlie, and that's Medicare Advantage. So that's basically privatized Medicare, where you're leaving the traditional system and you're assigning your rights to a private insurance company who will then administer it for you. And Medicare Part D as in drug is your prescription drug coverage. Now, what gets messy though is that those are kind of the four main parts. A and B is the key ones. C and D are the other kind of two extra standards. But where it gets confusing, Bill, is that we then also have Medicare supplement plans, which are also called Medigap plans, and they also have letters. And so you have letters for the parts of Medicare, but then also letters for the Medicare supplement plans. And so you could be on Part B and also have a Medicare supplement plan B if you wanted. So it gets messy.
It is messy. I mean, that's complicated, and this is why you need to work with a professional like your
Yeah.
company to help with this. I mean, it's just as difficult. I mean, this is as important as making your Social Security decision. When you start that, when do you draw down on your assets? Which bucket do you pull from? Does it make your Medicare and your Social Security taxable? And which bracket is that in? Knowing these little ins and outs are really the key, and that's why it's so important to have great people around you who can really help you, really, really help you. And the biggest takeaway listening to you, and I like studying this stuff, but I don't know every single little in and out like you do, not even close, is it's just like anything else from a planning standpoint. Getting it right the first time is the key. And how do you help everyone get it right who you come across really the first time? Because I know that's your goal.
Yeah.
It's obvious. It's so incredibly obvious to give people the right information. Like, how do you actually how have you been able to create that from a process standpoint?
Again, I think we've helped over 8,000 people.
Wow.
And so we know when you've helped, I mean, even when you've helped enough people and you've seen enough people who go to other people who got it wrong, we get to test our process, right? And it's like we have the process. We know where things get held up. Like if you have an employer plan or a retiree plan, like you're going on a totally different route than everyone else. But I think it's doing the due diligence. It's about having the practice. It's about having clients who we've had here for 10, 15 years, right? So you've seen life cycles too, and you've seen how decisions play out, whether they're healthy or they're not. And we've just done it so many times. And again, we're not an insurance agent, right? Like we're a fee-based consultant. We're not getting paid any commissions. We're not the government. And so we have very different motives to be our client's advocate. And so we're not impacted by, oh, guess what? This new product is gonna pay you 3 times the higher commission. Like, we don't get commission. So we get to really be focused on serving our clients, which allows us, I think, to have that clear process around Medicare, because again, they pay us. We don't get paid from anyone else. And so I think that's why we're so different, and how we know that we can help our clients through it. Which is, I love our clients. It's an exciting time of life. It's exciting and scary at the same time, but it's such an honor to help them through this and provide that confidence, to provide that simplicity, to such an important decision.
So important. And it shows that you do it well. So thank you for that, because there's a lot of folks who want to just, kind of rip people off or just, take advantage of lack of knowledge. And it's great that you actually take people through a process and show them, here's the best decision, or here's what's going to help you the most, or even save you the most money over the long term. So thank you for all that you do. It's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you for what you do. Again, I feel like I just get to safeguard what financial planners do. It's like you do the hard work, and then we get to come in and just make sure that you now go to enjoy it and not jeopardize anything else. So it's a fun collaboration.
So how can everyone get a hold of you?
I think the best way is I have a free workshop. So if you go to themedicarecoach.com, on our homepage, you'll see an option to sign up for a free workshop. Join me. It's all online. It's the best. People rave about the workshop. They wish they would have started there before they went to any of those agents' free lunches or anything else. So you can do it from home. I'll cut through all the noise, and it's what I wish my dad and I had when we first got started. So.
Oh yeah, and you've had hundreds of thousands of people and hundreds of thousands of folks, even on your Facebook page, who are a part of your community. So there's strength behind the numbers there. So everyone, please go check out the course. And I really hope, and I know it will help you plan for a better future for your retirement. So Emily, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great to catch up and just chat and spend time with you again today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Bill. It was a pleasure.